Hi everyone! Before we dive into this week's episode, please check out our promo of the week.
Lauren Demolo vanished without a trace on June 19th.
Police called Demolo's disappearance suspicious.
Lauren Demolo was last seen more than a week ago at her Cape Coral apartment, and police believe she's in danger.
Where is Lauren Demolo?
You don't really hear these stories in such a beautiful town. You feel like your whole world is safe.
This is a story that needs to be told because this story needs an ending.
Her message said, I don't know what to do. I need to get out of this situation. I need help.
Maybe somebody really was after her.
And I said, the girl you're supposedly in love with and engaged to has not been home and is missing. And you're not going to be there or go looking for her. I said, I got a big problem with all of this.
Unexpected twists and turns fuel a community-wide search to bring Lauren home. But Lauren is still missing, and nobody's talking.
I do believe she will be found. I really do believe that justice will be served. A lot of people know exactly what happened.
There are so many puzzle pieces here that you can't figure out what happened.
Someone is responsible. Someone is complicit.
I'm not going to stop until I find out what happened to my daughter.
I'm Hillary Wadsworth. And I'm Caitlin Body. Join us as we seek to find out what really happened to Lauren Demolo. Complicit is now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And this is CrimeDivers.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode.
Hello everyone.
And today is the last episode of Series 4.
It is, but do you know what else it is?
What?
It's actually our 100th episode today.
Is it?
It is.
Oh, I never even noticed.
I know, I was just looking at the episodes earlier and I was like counting them up and I thought, oh, it's actually our 100th episode.
Wow.
So what a way to end the series. 100
Wow.
episodes of us.
Can you believe that we've done 100?
I know.
That's a lot.
I know. You're also blessed out there to have listened to us for that long. Or not. Or if you've just joined us, there's plenty for you to catch up
Yeah,
on.
exactly. There's a lot.
I know, but yeah, 100 episodes, amazing.
Yeah, wow. Go us.
I know.
High five.
Woo! Yes, perfect way to end the series.
Yeah, so
we are ending the series today on series 4, but we will obviously be back with season 5
in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
in a couple of weeks' time.
We're just going to take a couple of weeks off, and we will be back
with more true crime stories.
Yeah, I was going to say bigger and better, but we might be bigger, but we won't be any better.
We're just the same.
Yeah, we'll just be the same.
Yeah.
We might put a few pounds on, you know. You never know.
You never know.
Anyway,
right,
that's enough of us waffling.
So what is our case today?
It's called The Midwest Murderers.
Okay, and where in the world?
We're in the USA. So there was murders on the Midwest of the UK, of the USA.
The USA.
Okay, I think we need a break. I think we need this to be the last episode. Jill needs a break.
Yes, I think Jill does. But anyway, shall we dive in?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Go.
So Vernita Wheat was born on the 12th of March 1975. Her mum was Juanita Wheat, and she had a brother called Brandon, who was a couple of years younger than her, and they lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin, USA. So in 1984, Vernita was 9, and her mum Juanita met a man at the end of April in 1984. Mm-hmm. He introduced himself as Robert Knight, and he said that he just lived a couple of blocks away. And so they just kind of got, over the next few weeks, they just sort of got to know each other, became friendly. You know, he would come over for dinner, and he would spend time playing with the kids. He met Juanita's cousin and her neighbours, and you know, they were just friends. Yeah. Everyone was all good.
Yeah.
So on the 29th of May 1984, Robert took the kids to a carnival. They had a great time, and when they came back, Robert said that he needed to go back to his house to pick something up. Not sure what, doesn't matter. I saw a couple of different sources. On one source, he said he was going to pick up a belated Mother's Day present for her. Another one, he said he was going to pick up a stereo. It doesn't matter, but they were going to pick up something.
Right.
And as I said before, he lived just a couple of blocks away. So he asked if Vernita could go along with him to help carry it back.
Must have been big.
And promised, that, we'll move along. And Juanita was reluctant at first, but Vernita really wanted to go. She's like, oh, come on, like, we're not going to be long, let me just go. And, so she's like, oh, right, okay then, as long as you come straight back. But hours went by.
Got a bit.
And Robert and Vernita hadn't come back. So Juanita was kind of like, oh, what do I do? And she was like, she wanted to go looking for her, but then she was like, what if I leave the apartment and she comes back and then she's going to be scared? So she was like, but eventually it got to the stage where she was like, I need to go and find her. So she just left a note saying, if you do come back, just stay in the house and, I'll be back in a minute. So Juanita, she went to the address that Robert had given her, but the building was abandoned.
Oh, no.
So, obviously, she's really panicking now. So she went to her friend Ellen's house, I think she was her neighbour, and they both went to the police station to report Vernita missing.
Right.
So the police didn't have a Robert Knight on record, so they asked Juanita just to look through mugshots just in case he wasn't who he said he was. So she looked through two big books of photos and then she found him.
Oh, God.
This man was 28-year-old Alton Coleman.
So it wasn't Robert Knight.
It wasn't Robert Knight at all. It was Alton Coleman. So police got a search warrant for Alton's last known address, which was his grandmother's house in Waukegan, Illinois, which was a few miles across the state line from where Vernita and Juanita lived. Sorry, I keep struggling to say their names because they're so similar. Yeah. So they went to his grandmother's house. So a young woman answered the door and she said her name was Deborah Brown and that she was Alton's girlfriend. So she was 21 and he was 28. So and they were living with the grandmother, with his grandmother. So at first she was reluctant to answer any questions about Alton, but she said she had been living there for a year and she'd been looking after his grandma who was nearly blind. The investigators persisted and they finally got Deborah to cooperate, and she said that Alton had been gone all night, but he had came home at 8 o'clock that morning. So this is obviously later on the next day. But he had came home at 8 o'clock that morning and he'd to get changed into a suit for a court appearance.
All right.
He had been charged with raping a 14-year-old girl at knife point.
Holy shit.
Why are you his girlfriend?
Well, yeah, I know.
I don't know. Anyway, so Deborah also said that Alton had told her that he had done something really bad the night before, but he didn't tell her what he had done.
Right.
So
well, that's a bit scary, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of,
I mean, if you're already going to court for rape that she knows about, and he tells her that he's done something bad, then I'd be like, well, what the fuck have you done? And
but I don't think she was too bothered, to be honest. So officers sort of waited at the house to see if Alton came back, and then the other officers sort of canvassed the area, and but he was nowhere to be found. So local police joined forces with the FBI because this is a 9-year-old child.
Yeah, of course.
So detectives from Kenosha and nearby Waukegan already knew Alton's reputation. He was a violent criminal with a disturbing past. Okay. He had been arrested almost 10 years previously for the rape of a 40-year-old woman, and he had a number of other arrests, mostly for assault, but there were others for molestation and rape of a child. So obviously, not a nice guy.
No, definitely not a nice guy.
So the task force enlisted every available officer and agent to help in the search for Alton and Renita. So they split into teams and started interviewing people. Alton didn't have a car, so he often took the train and taxis. So officers spoke to drivers at various taxi stands, and everyone was familiar with him because he did use the taxis a lot.
Right.
So the cabbies all said, right, if we see him, we'll notify the police. So the officers are offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to Alton's arrest, and that did catch people's attention, so they did sort of get a few leads and stuff, but it just didn't draw out anything useful. So 2 days later, on the 31st of May, a taxi driver from Waukegan called in to say that he was just about to pick Alton up. He knew him by sight, so when he saw him flagging down the taxi, before he picked him up, he radioed in and said, I'm about to pick up Alton Coleman.
Somebody phoned the police.
Yeah, so obviously, the taxi office, because, he would have radioed at the taxi office.
Right.
So they let the police know, and a squad car in the area responded to the call and followed the taxi. So Alton was dropped off at his sister Terry's house, but as he was knocking on the door, he saw the approaching officer and he bolted. Yeah, he just ran. So, backup arrived, everybody started, looking for him. And they thought that it was probably likely behind, because there was a lot of abandoned warehouses, a lot of buildings and stuff that ran along Lake Michigan. Did I say it right? Michigan.
Yes.
Yeah, because of anybody who's not a Patreon, well, not because I think it was in a Patreon episode, the case was in Michigan and I called it Michigan.
Yeah.
Which in all my years, I thought it was Michigan, and Laura corrected me on that episode. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Totally embarrassed me to our Patreons. That it's actually pronounced Michigan.
Yes. Michigan is correct. So well
I
done.
pronounced it properly this time.
Well done. High fives.
I actually spelled it M-I-S-H, so that
so you would pronounce it right.
Anyway, there's a lot of warehouse that ran along Lake Michigan. So obviously that's where where the officers were looking, and all the abandoned buildings and everything. And an officer knocked on Terry's door, his sister, thinking that maybe Alton would respond to his sister's voice. It's and she was the mother of a young girl, so when the officer explained why they were looking for Alton, she's like, right, okay, I'll help. So they gave her one of those megaphone things.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think it's called a bullhorn thing.
Oh, I just know it's a megaphone.
I don't know if that's the make of it or something. I've seen it referred to as a bullhorn.
All right, okay.
But
anyway, we'll
big speaker thing.
Speaking,
yeah. So she was walking around speaking into it, pleading for her brother to give himself up. But nothing. And meanwhile, officer and agents fanned out and searched the area. But as I said, it was just hard because the area had a lot of abandoned buildings. There was a lot of abandoned apartment complexes. There was a lot of brush. So it would be easy at night time to escape in there and just not be seen again. And because he knows the area so well,
yeah, you could easily find somewhere to hide.
Yeah, and obviously he did. So as this was in 1984, they didn't have helicopters with the searchlights. They didn't have infrared. They didn't have the resources to fully encircle an area of that size.
Yeah.
So the search,
I bet it would have been found easily enough in this day and age.
Oh, probably. Well, it would have been a lot easier, put it that way.
Definitely.
The search continued through the night, but after 8 hours, it seemed that their suspect and their best chance of finding Vernita had slipped through their fingers. So desperate to generate leads, the local media was covered with details surrounding the abduction. TV and newspapers published photos of Vernita, asking anyone with any information to contact the task force. The news spread quickly, and investigators were flooded with sightings of Alton Coleman from the public, but unfortunately most of them were dead ends. Can you imagine how frustrating it must be? Because as you always say, the first few hours, or the first few hours are the most important. As each hour is going by, they're obviously, it's the hope must be fading. It must be absolutely awful.
Definitely.
But one taxi driver who saw he saw her picture on the news and he contacted the police. He remembered picking up Alton and Vernita on the night of her disappearance.
Right.
But he had just assumed that they were father and daughter. And he dropped them off around midnight near a scrapyard in the industrial section of Waukegan. So officers headed off to the scrapyard and they spoke to the night manager there, and he said, yeah, he saw a man with a little girl on that night. He recalled that close to midnight, the two had walked hand in hand through the side gate. He said he couldn't really see the man's face, but he did notice that the man had an unusual way of walking, and he described it to the police, and apparently that was the same way that Alton walked. I can't describe it, I don't know. It was,
he had an unusual walk.
A particular way of walking. Right. So, they showed the night manager a picture of Vernita, and he said, yep, that was the little girl. So they were like, right, okay. So the sighting was enough to allow the FBI to issue a federal warrant for Alton Coleman as he had taken Vernita across state lines.
What the hell are they doing at this place scrapyard at that time of night, though?
Well, I mean, you would kind of wonder. And, I was thinking that when the taxi driver said he just assumed it was father and daughter. And I suppose you probably would kind of think, why have you got your 9-year-old child out at this time of night? But people are weird. People do funny things. There's always, there's 99% of the time there will be legitimate reasons for people doing certain things like that. So,
that's true.
you know, and this all the thing. Well, it's none of your business, is it? Like,
no, I know. How is that sort of thing, isn't it?
I mean, I would, if I had seen a man out with his child, you know, and his 9-year-old child at that time of night, I would be like, well, get your child to bed, but I wouldn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
you know,
you wouldn't act on it. You just have a thought to yourself in your head, like that's a bit.
That's strange. Why is that child not in her bed?
Yeah.
You know, but so the task force responded with another massive search. So they had about 150 FBI agents and detectives from both Kenosha and Waukegan. They did a methodical search where Alton was last seen with Renita. So this included using dogs going through the scrapyards, house to house and abandoned building searches all in this downtown area, but they found nothing. So investigators knew that Renita had been alive at midnight on the evening that she disappeared, but they also knew that Alton was alone the next morning at 8 a.m. As he prepared for his court appearance. So they needed to find out what had happened to Renita in those 8 hours. And they were just struggling to fit the pieces together. They had no idea how far Alton had travelled with Renita, because 8 hours is a long time. You could get quite far.
Well, you could drive down to London from here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you wouldn't get back, though.
No, you wouldn't get back. That's
No.
fair. So well, you could drive down to Manchester.
I was going to say, you can get to Manchester and back in 8 hours.
Manchester and back in 8 hours,
So, yeah, like, I mean, like, was she even in Waukegan? Like, had he taken her to another town? They just had no idea where she was. And now that Alton had taken off, they had no idea where he was either.
Yeah, so they had, like, no leads or nothing to go on.
So on the night of the 19th of June, which was 3 weeks after Renita's disappearance, investigators received a call from a man in Waukegan who was looking through an abandoned apartment building for scrap metal to sell. On the second floor, in one of the apartments, he had found the body of a child lying on the bathroom floor. So the forensic team arrived at the building, and beneath a blanket wrapped in a man's corduroy jacket, they found a little girl's body. Her hands, feet and neck were bound by like a television cable, and she was too badly decomposed to confirm her identity. But of course they were pretty sure that this was it was Renita. So the clothing matching the description they had of what Renita had been wearing, the clothing matched the description of what she'd been wearing. And in the pocket of her jacket were carnival tickets, and they knew that Renita had been to the carnival that day. So starting from the location of the body, forensics started looking for evidence that could point to the killer. I mean, they were pretty
convinced of who, but
they had to get you have to get the forensics, don't you?
You have to still prove it.
So they worked their way out in concentric circles, collecting anything that looked like it could be used as evidence. They swabbed walls and door frames in an effort to find prints. Figuring whoever moved the body into the room had to come in contact with the door, they actually removed the door from its hinges and sent it to the FBI labs in Washington, D.C. Under the lab's microscopes, they found a thumbprint on the door. They compared to samples that they had on file for Alton, and it was definitely his. They also compared prints taken from the little girl's hands to those lifted from Renita's school books, and that comparison was also positive. So the search for Renita was over, unfortunately. So, yeah, I know. So investigators now had enough evidence to issue another warrant for Alton Coleman, and this time it was for the murder of Renita Wheat. So while at the autopsy to determine Renita's exact cause of death, there was a guy called Agent Showers and a Detective Hansen. They were at the autopsy, and the TV was on. So there was the news was on. It caught their attention because the reporter was saying that a little girl had been found murdered in a place called Gary, which is in Indiana. And immediately they wondered if there could be some connection to Alton. The news report also said something that investigators found disturbing. There were two killers. And the second suspect was described as being a black female. They immediately wondered if this could be Alton's girlfriend, Deborah Brown, because she hadn't been seen in weeks. She hadn't been seen since they obviously went and questioned her. So two little girls had actually been attacked, and one of them survived. And she was in a hospital in this place called Gary. I just think it's funny that place is called Gary, because to me that's a man's name, or a boy's name. But she was in hospital in Gary. So the officers went to interview her. Her name was Annie Hillard, and she was 9. And she had been walking back from the candy shop with her auntie, who was actually 2 years younger than her.
Oh,
so her
right.
auntie was 7,
Right, okay.
and she was 9. So her auntie was Tamika Turks. And Alton and Debra approached them, or these two, it was Alton and Debra. Like, I just realised I just gave that away, that it was Alton and Debra. But yeah, this man and woman had approached them, because obviously the little girl gave her account, she didn't know who they were. It was just like this man and woman approached her.
Right.
So they approached them and convinced them to walk into the woods to play a game. Once there, they removed Tamika's top and tore it into small strips, like so they had the material to use to bind and gag the little girls.
Right, okay.
And when Tamika began to cry, Debra held her nose and mouth while Alton stomped on her chest, and she was strangled to death with an elastic strip of bedsheet. Don't know why they had that with them, but that was actually found later at their house.
Right, okay.
So,
yeah.
Annie was sexually assaulted by both Debra and Alton, and then they choked her until she was unconscious. So I think they must have thought that they'd killed her, but they hadn't. So, and when she woke, they were gone.
Right, okay.
So she managed to drag herself out of the woods into the street where she was found, and she was taken to hospital. So Annie was shown photos, and she was able to identify Alton, but she didn't identify Debra from the photos, but the description that she'd given did match Debra's. On the same day, the 19th of June, a 25-year-old woman called Donna Williams disappeared. She was from Gary as well, and she was found on the 11th of July, so that's nearly a month later, in Detroit, Michigan, which is 254 miles away, and she had been raped and strangled with a stocking. So, you know, there's a pattern here.
There is, yeah. Although she's older.
Yeah, but I meant like they're on the move and they're killing.
So they're killing while they're on the move, yeah.
So Deborah Brown, she had only been looked at before as a witness because she had cooperated with them before in Waukegan. Like she had told the police about Alton telling her that he had done something bad. She had shown them the clothes that he had been wearing the night that Vernita had disappeared. So they'd never suspected her of anything.
Well, no, because initially you wouldn't, would you?
No, but now they knew from the investigation in Gary that she was assisting Alton.
Totally.
So investigators had to try and figure out where they think Alton and Debra would head next. Both murders had occurred in largely black communities. They're both black. Alton and Debra are both black. And they were committed, these murders had been in largely black communities. So it was like, so that they would easily blend in.
Yeah.
And they were obviously, like, they were quick to, like, gain people's trust. They had charm, and it just seemed easy for them.
Right, okay.
Investigators consulted an FBI behavioural. I can't say that.
Behavioural. Well, I can't say that. Behavioural. No.
Yeah, I think we know. We know. I think. I hope everybody else will know what we mean.
If not, they can just have a good laugh at what they tell they two tried.
Yeah, they consulted an FBI behavioural profiler to try and help locate and stop Alton and Debra before they struck again, because they're like, you know, I don't think this is the last time they're gonna.
They're obviously gonna keep moving around and keep doing it.
So for the profiler, the escalating pattern of violence was caused by Alton's legal problems back in Waukegan. This is the profiler. He saw the fact that he had taken Vernita the night before a court appearance for raping a 14-year-old as an indication that he was responding to the stress of the court appearance, and so that he would continue to murder, like, out of anger and stress and rage, because like, I don't know, this is just what the profiler's saying.
He's just reacting to something he doesn't obviously want to go and do in a stressful situation. That's his release.
That's his way of reacting to it, So investigators had reason to fear that the two murders were only the beginning of a ferocious crime spree. But that's actually, I've just realised that I've just said 2 murders there, but it was actually 3 murders, because we've had Vernita, the little girl, Tamika, and was it Donna?
Donna, yeah.
The lady. Yeah, so it was actually 3. So to capture a serial killer, the profiler suggested a massive national media campaign aimed at the black communities, because, as I said, this is that seemed to be their pattern.
Yeah, that's where they're targeting, yeah.
So that's what they did, and they released photos of both Alton and Debra to the media, hoping that someone would see them and turn them in. But the task force always seemed to be like a step behind.
Right.
And on the 8th of July, agents received information from local Ohio detectives about an elderly woman who had reported her daughter missing. So she explained that earlier on in the day, she had come to her daughter's house to check on her and found the door locked. Her daughter was, her name was Virginia Temple, and her mum hadn't heard from her, which is why she was checking in on her. So one of Virginia's sons, 8-year-old James, had came to the door, but he wouldn't open it. He was, even though it was his gran that was on the other side, he was scared. He was just obviously terrified of something. So the detectives got there, and they convinced him, you know, like, we're here to help, you know, come on, just, like, there was nothing to be scared of, just open the door, you know, and we'll have a chat. And so eventually, you know, he opened the door and let them in. So the officers started searching the house for Virginia, and they actually found another of Virginia's sons. I think she had 3 kids.
Right.
So this was 3-year-old Johnny, and he was hiding behind the couch because he was so scared.
What were they scared of?
Well, I'm just about to tell you. So the reason they were scared was because a man and woman had been in their house.
Right.
The older son, James, was shown photos, and he identified Alton and Debra as the couple who had been there the night before.
Right.
So as officers searched the house, they found blood smeared through the kitchen. It was on the floor and the walls, and it led down to the basement. So they followed the blood trail, and unfortunately, they found the body of Virginia. But also, they found the body of her 9-year-old daughter, Rochelle, as well. They had both been strangled to death. They continued searching the house, believing the murderers could still be in the house somewhere, but they weren't. But they did leave some evidence behind, and it was actually hair in the back. Like, they'd obviously cut their hair, but they left it in the bathroom.
Oh.
So I'm going to explain it anyway.
So I didn't touch the boys then.
No idea, because, well, it's always been females so far, hasn't it?
That's true. Yeah.
So James, the 8-year-old, he was questioned, and he said that his mum had he had met Alton and Debra on the day before. So the 3 kids, they'd been playing in the front garden outside the house, and Alton and Debra had sort of came along cycling on their bikes, and they stopped and told the kids, because I don't think they had there wasn't like a fence around the garden or anything like that, you know, it was just like, you could see them like off the street. So they stopped, they told the kids that they were new to the area, and they were just chatting away, and like Virginia obviously must have heard them, so she came out to see who her kids were talking to. And she was chatting away to them, and they played with the kids in the garden while she was, Virginia was there. And so they must have got on really well, because Virginia, well, do you want to stay for dinner? You know, you're new at the area, get to know you. I wouldn't do that.
I'm thinking the same thing, like...
I am just not sociable in the slightest.
No, I mean, obviously, as we know, I moved into my house last year, and, I've met my neighbours, I've spoke to my neighbours. I'll be honest, Justin has invited them into my back garden because they want to see it getting done, but I would never invite them out for dinner. I wouldn't invite somebody that I just met. No,
but that's just me, because I'm like really unsociable.
Yeah, I mean that's just me as well, because I don't really like...
I don't see anything wrong with it. Like,
no,
I just
don't really like people in my house.
don't relate. I just don't relate to that. That's what I'm saying.
The thing is that I don't relate either.
No,
like...
But I just think that's really nice. She must be such a lovely person, which is what I was kind of getting at. I'm not saying that I'm not a lovely person, because I
can understand if you maybe... over time you had got to know your neighbours very well, and you must, be speaking up a lot, and you build up a sort of rapport with them, but not when I've just met somebody that I don't even know. I wouldn't be inviting them for dinner.
We wouldn't do that, but obviously she did, and maybe that was the kind of communities that they lived in. They were all friendly with each other, and all treated each other really.
That's true. I know. It's just our personal preferences.
Yeah, I just don't relate to people that do things like that.
No.
But yeah, I mean, as I said, she might, they must have got on really well, and she invited them for dinner. So it was just like any other summer evening in the neighbourhood. Virginia cooked while her children, her and the kids chatted with Alton and Debra, thinking that they were making new friends and like making them welcome at their new home, But James, he actually saw Alton take a knife from the kitchen counter and slip it into his back pocket, but he was 8, so he was probably too scared to say anything, So after dinner, Alton, Debra, James and Johnny, so the couple and the 2 boys, sat in the living room to watch the TV while Virginia and her daughter Rochelle were washing the dishes. the news came on, and the first story was about a pair of killers that were on the loose. So Alton immediately jumped up, switched the TV off, and like said to the boys, right, I think it's about time you went to bed now. So they did go up to bed, and realising just how much the media attention was growing, Alton realised that he and Deborah needed to change their appearance.
Right.
So they went to the bathroom and cut their hair off and just left it there on the sink. Like, weird.
Yeah, you think you'd get rid of that?
Well, you'd think, yeah. So they went back downstairs, and him and Deborah went into the kitchen and approached Rochelle and Virginia. They killed them. As I said, they were strangled. They dragged them down to the basement and stuffed them into a crawl space. I know, they're just, why?
I know, why can't they just left the house and gone?
Because that's obviously not what they were there for. They were obviously there for a reason. The reason was to kill. So, you know how like the FBI have like a 10 most wanted list? Well, because of the savage nature of these killings, they actually added an 11th position, which is a really rare occurrence. Like the number 11 ranking, that is reserved for like particularly vicious killers. So they were actually added.
Oh, wow.
That was number 11.
Oh, dear.
So investigators were sure that Alton and Deborah would get tired of life on the run and return to like familiar territory. So agents contacted every single person that the two were associated with in Waukegan, but nobody gave them any useful information.
Right.
So after they'd killed Virginia and Rochelle, they broke into the house of Frank and Dorothy Duvendak, tied them up with electrical cords, and they stole the couple's money and car, because they obviously needed transport.
Yeah.
On the 12th of July, so 4 days later, a 15-year-old girl called Tawny Story, who lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, disappeared. She had left her house to attend a computer class at school, and 8 days later, her bound and partially decomposed body was discovered in an abandoned building, and she had been strangled. A classmate testified that she had seen Tawny talking to Deborah Brown beforehand. Obviously, she didn't know who it was at the time, but later she obviously identified her. And a fingerprint from the scene matched Alton's, and a bracelet that had been stolen from Virginia's house was found under Tawny's body. Laura, stop laughing. I know why you're laughing, but I was just going to ignore that, but then I realised that you were laughing at a really inappropriate bit when we were talking about a 15-year-old's body.
That's not what I was laughing at.
No, she was laughing because I burped when I was talking there. I don't know if anybody heard it. I was just going to keep going and ignore it. But I had to, I didn't want anybody to think that you were laughing.
No, I wasn't laughing at that, obviously.
Yeah. So that's why she was laughing. She was laughing because I burped.
I'm really immature.
Yeah, because she is really immature and laughed because I burped when I was talking. Right, are you okay?
Yeah, go.
Can I?
Carry on.
So the day after they killed Tawny, Alton and Deborah cycled into a place called Norwood, and they knocked on the door of Harry and Marlene Walters. And I just want to add, by now, they were actually, Harry and Marlene were actually white.
Right.
So they'd kind of moved away. It wasn't just black communities that they were targeting now. So
they were changing their...
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if there was a reason for it. I don't know. I just sort of pointed that out because it wasn't always the black communities that they were targeting.
Right.
So, yeah, so they knocked on the door of Harry and Marlene Walters. Harry answered, and they told him that they were interested in... He had a camper van for sale on his driveway. So they knocked at the door and said that they were interested in buying the camper van. So Harry's wife, Marlene, joined them on the porch as they chatted. And as they were chatting, their daughter, Sherry, left for work. So she saw them as she was walking out. And later that day, when Sherry arrived home from work, she noticed that the Alton and Deborah's bikes were still outside the house because they'd cycled.
Right.
I don't know if I said that. They cycled. The bikes were still there, but her dad's car was gone.
Right.
So she walked into the house, and the place, had been ransacked. Like, everything,
right.
There was glass smashed, there was everything,
everything.
Just all over the place, as if there'd been a burglary or whatever, So she shouted for her parents, got no answer. So she was like, right, picked up the phone to call the police, and she heard a weak voice calling out from another room. So she, what the hell, followed the voice. And Nick, it was come from the basement. At the basement door, she noticed a bloody palm print. So she opened the door, walked down the stairs to the basement, and she found her mum and dad lying next to each other on the floor. They both had ligatures round their throats and electrical cords tied around their bare feet. Marlene's hands were bound behind her back, and Harry's hands were handcuffed behind his back. So Harry was barely alive, because it was his voice that she'd heard. And she reached over to check her mum's pulse, but there's a sheet covering her mum's face.
Right.
And she lifted the sheet and she could see that her mum was dead.
Yeah.
But luckily Harry survived. So later he sort of said what had happened. He testified that they had invited the couple in the house to discuss, the details, because they said they wanted to buy the van. So they were, going over the details. And Alton had picked up a wooden candlestick to admire it, and then just whacked Harry over the back of the head, like knocking him unconscious.
Right, okay.
And then they'd obviously attacked Marlene. So the coroner indicated that Marlene had been bludgeoned approximately 20 to 25 times during her violent assault.
Jeez.
So, of course, like Sherry, the daughter, she gave a description, and of course it matched Alton and Debra. And also there was shards of a broken soda bottle had been found with Alton's fingerprints. And they also left clothes and shoes and bikes behind. So I don't know if they changed, maybe took some of their clothes and changed into them.
Yeah, maybe.
And they stole the Walters' car, money, jewellery, shoes. So,
wow. So
an APB was immediately put out on the vehicle, and 2 days later, a farm worker discovered the abandoned car on his property in Lexington, Kentucky, which was 105 miles away from the Walters in Cincinnati.
So they've driven quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I kind of meant earlier by they were on the move. I kind of jumped ahead of myself when I said they were on the move.
Yeah.
But yeah. So they seemed to be travelling further away from their home in Illinois rather than closer, because remember, the investigators thought, they'll get tired and they'll head home.
Back, yeah.
But they were moving further away.
They had no intention of doing that by the sounds of it.
But knowing that they would eventually need to steal a car, the FBI were searching everywhere in the area hoping to find them. They didn't have to wait long. Because in a hotel car park, a guy called Professor Oline Carmichael was assaulted and his car was stolen, and the couple forced him to hand over his cash and car keys. They shoved him in the boot of the car and drove to Ohio. They abandoned the car in Dayton, Ohio, and Professor Carmichael was rescued by authorities. Imagine getting driven in the boot of your own car.
I don't know, that would be risky.
But at least they left him alone.
Well, yeah.
So because they had drove back to Ohio, they had turned round and went back now. So the investigators thought Alton and Debra were probably on their way back to Illinois, or at the very least somewhere that was like familiar, somewhere they felt comfortable.
Yeah.
Alton had never been to any of these other places that they'd been before.
Right.
So the investigators figured that at some point he would get tired and want to get back to like some sort of comfort and like somewhere where he knows the streets, knows the people. And they were obviously right now. They were right to start off with, but it just took them a bit longer than what they expected.
They went a bit further afield first before they came back.
So FBI agents and police officers from across several states joined forces to track Alton and Debra as they headed back, and like any assaults or car thefts were to be given like immediate attention. An officer in Dayton, Ohio, responded to a report involving an assault and a stolen car. So the call came from an elderly couple, Reverend and Mrs. Gay. The Reverend had been badly beaten, and Mrs. Gay told the officer that a young couple, who they had actually met a few weeks earlier, had broken into their house. After beating them, the attackers demanded the keys to their car, and according to the descriptions, the couple, of course, were Alton and Debra. So the following day, agents found the car abandoned near a car wash in Indiana. So later that day, some road crew workers on the edge of Interstate 65 outside of Zionsville, I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but Indiana, they found a body. And it was of an elderly man who had been reported missing from his home. He was found on his 77th birthday. Evidence left at the scene was unmistakable. Alton and Debra had killed again, and this was less than 20 miles away from their hometown, so they were moving back, yeah. On the 20th of July in Evanston, Illinois, a man spotted Alton and Debra in a park. This guy had gone to school with Alton, so he knew straight away that it was definitely him.
Yeah.
So he had a friend in the car with him, so the friend went to a payphone and called the police. The police arrived, cornered Alton, but he insisted that they had the wrong man. A second pair of officers surrounded Deborah, and when asked, she gave different names for her and Alton. Like,
come on,
okay, you should know better than that.
Exactly, you've been on the most wanted list, and
there's ways of confirming your identity.
Exactly. And even if they were unsure, I'm sure they'd be confirming your identity.
Well, exactly. They were taken into custody, and of course, they were both identified by their fingerprints.
Yeah.
So I don't have much background on the couple, but what I do have is that Alton grew up with his grandmother. He was a middle school dropout, and he was well known to the Illinois police, having been charged with sex crimes 6 times between 1973 and 1983. He was diagnosed with mixed personality disorder with antisocial, narcissistic and obsessive features, with additional diagnoses including epileptic spasms, psychosis and borderline personality disorder.
Right.
And Deborah, she was one of 11 children and is borderline intellectually disabled. She suffered head trauma as a child and was diagnosed with dependent personality disorder. She was engaged to another man when she met Alton in 1983, but she left him and moved in with Alton soon after meeting him. She was a willing participant in Alton's assaults and murders, so he never made her do any of that. She wasn't forced. She was a willing participant. But she had no history of violence or any criminal history before she met him.
All right. So he just obviously must have,
I think,
charmed her or something, and she must
have just, I think because she's got the dependent personality disorder and the borderline intellectually disabled, then I think that's probably played a lot into it. But I'm not excusing her in any way because, she did go along with it. She was willing. Yeah. So Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown were both sentenced to death. Alton actually received 2 death sentences from Ohio and 1 each from Illinois and Indiana. So he got 4 death sentences.
But where do they execute him then?
So at the time of his execution, he was the only condemned person in the United States to have death sentences in 3 states. And he was executed by lethal injection on the 26th of April 2002. And Deborah had her death sentence changed to life imprisonment in 1991, even though during the sentencing phase of her trial, she sent a note to the judge, and part of it said, "I killed the bitch and I don't give a damn. I had fun out of it." I don't know who she was referring to.
Oh, okay.
But imagine writing a note to the judge to say that.
I know, that's a bit...
"I killed the bitch and I don't give a damn. I had fun out of it."
Yeah,
which is why I'm not taking any pity on her whatsoever.
Definitely not.
So she is currently serving her sentence without the possibility of parole at the Dayton Correctional Institution in Ohio. So they're a pair of
evil.
I don't even know what the word is. Monsters.
Yeah,
just
totally. Oh my god. Yeah, they're not nice, are they?
No, like just
no, that's awful. I mean.
And I bet you thought at the start of this story, I bet you just thought it was just going to be the one murder of Renita.
I know, that's what I thought it was, just about poor little Renita, and then you just had to tell me that there was so many more.
I know. But so they were absolute monsters. He's gone. She's never going to get out of prison.
Yeah.
So
those poor people that lost their lives.
I know.
Awful. Absolutely awful.
So there you go. So shall we, before we end our season 4, shall we get on to our missing person of the week?
So her name is Sorita Lynn Annis. She was last seen on the 12th of July last year in Crestview, Florida. She's 24, she's got green eyes, 5'2", 160 to 170 pounds. She has suffered from a drug addiction and mental health issues. So if anybody has any information that can help find her, can you please contact her family, which is Bonnie, on 850-612-0519, or Lynda on 757-579-0582.
Okay, and I will put that information in the show notes, and we'll get a picture of her up on social media. So, if anybody would like to follow us, our usual information is in the show notes.
And if you do enjoy listening to our episodes, and you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and we'll see you back soon for season 5.
Yep, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.